And we are live. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, depending on wherever you are in the world right now. And welcome to the first of my midweek streams. It's the first one at this time, as I wanted to see if it was possible to catch some of the early morning viewers in America and other parts of the world. So, firstly, as always, if people can hear me okay, please let me know if the audio is okay. For some reason, the little slider that picks up the volume never seems to say that it's picking it up. But every time I've watched these back on catch up and on replay, the audio seems fine, and people say they can hear. What could go wrong? Great to have you in the chat. 9 p.m. in Australia, just before bed. Beautiful. You can hear my audio okay? And we'll get right into it. Also, again, if you notice, I get these very dry eyes. So if I'm dabbing, I've got this wet cloth here. If I'm dabbing my eyes, you know why it is. It's not because I'm crying my eyes out. Okay. A little crackly, yeah. I think there's I don't know if there's something off with the connection or something, but if you can hear me okay, if it gets too difficult, then if it gets too bad, just let me know and I'll see what I can do. What I can do, I don't know. Good morning, Super Lisa. Beautiful. So, without further ado, let's get into our meditation here. The meditation will last around 20 to 30 minutes or so, but we won't be too strict with this. Sometimes goes on a little longer, sometimes a little shorter. It doesn't matter too much. So, bringing yourself into your preferred meditation posture, your preferred position for meditation, preferably in a position that supports your intention to remain focused and awake. Begin by simply becoming aware of a sense of being. Just a sense of opening awareness to what is. We're not interested so much in the content of the mind, the imagination of the mind, the prediction of the mind, the analysis of the mind, just leaving all of that aside for a moment. And instead, simply an immersion in a sense of what already is. We are not creating being. We are not imagining being. Reality just is as it already is now. So a sense of simply becoming aware of this background presence of being that is always present, It is simply often overlooked during our daily activity. So, bringing ourselves into this space of being in the here and now. And there is no next moment. Nothing is about to happen. We are not moving into a next moment. There is no next moment. This is not an attempt to ignore the future, but a recognition that there is no such thing as the future. If we take a moment, a minute here, to abide within the presence of being in this present moment, and see if we can pinpoint the exact moment that now becomes the future. Do this for a minute now. Now, fully immersed here within the ground of being, in this moment, can we pinpoint and delineate the exact moment that now becomes the past? So, finding here the present moment never becomes a future moment and never transforms into a previous moment. Experienced. This exercise was not a concept, but an experience of now. Now, as we have come to experience, there is no real future nor past. It also transpires there is no such thing as a present moment either. Present moment implies a future and a past. So, just leaving aside any concept of time for now. We have experienced that the concept of time is actually a function of the mind and not the reality of experience. So, perfectly safe to simply drop any concept of time now. Just a sense of being as what is. Now, becoming aware of experience itself. An immersion into the phenomenon of awareness, of the consciousness of awareness. What you are aware of, we are not so concerned about for the duration of this meditation. Instead, simply sink into the awareness itself. This may be a challenge. It is not something we are accustomed to doing habitually. But taking this time, this is your time and your opportunity now to really do this. Cease paying attention to what you are aware of. No longer extending attention outwards. Simply release and withdraw attention, and instead a relaxed, open curiosity as to what is this awareness. A sense of recognizing the experience you are currently having. But what it is that you are experiencing, we are not so interested at this time. Just allow all of what is experienced to soften in focus, as though it simply wasn't very interesting anymore. A game you are no longer interested in playing. A story that you have lost interest in telling or reading. As though halfway through the story, the film, the show, or the game, you just realize you're not really enjoying it so much, and you can leave it on, but just zone out from this experience. Let it sink into the background. And ordinarily, we are in a constant cycle of trying to assess whether the current experience is positive or negative or neutral. But for this time now, simply do not place any interpretation or analysis on the experience. All experience just is. The external world the internal world can merge. The senses, the content of the mind, emotions, they can all merge into one singular experience. And no need to try and assess if this experience is positive or negative or right or wrong. A sense of stepping away from this. All experience is constantly fluctuating, constantly changing. But experience itself does not change. We may be aware of so much in the outer and inner world, but so rarely do we understand the awareness that sits behind all does not change. It just is. Now, naturally, we may come to an understanding of this background awareness that is always aware of experience, but rightfully, we question and may ask, but how does this new understanding make my negative experiences any more bearable? Considering that sunlight shines upon everything. Sunlight shines upon a trash pile as much as it shines upon a newborn infant. The sunlight shines upon the rotting fungus, as well as shining upon a herd of beautiful deer. The sunlight shines upon the forest and the oceans. The sunlight shines upon a city just as much as it shines upon a mountain. The sun does not care where it shines. It just shines. It is this light that illuminates all. The sun is not disturbed when it shines upon something that we ordinarily would decide is unpleasant. The sun simply continues to shine. Our conscious awareness is this light that shines upon everything in our experience, whether external or internal, chaotic or still, loud or quiet, light or dark. To the awareness itself, it simply does not matter. The shining light of awareness simply shines upon all. The shining light of this impartial, loving, conscious awareness is aware of all changes, all flow within you and without you, inside, outside, mind, body. But this light remains constant and always at peace. Just as clouds can obscure the sky, the sunlight continues to shine. It's just that we can no longer see it. But the sunlight itself is not bothered by the clouds at all. Be as this sunlight. The awareness shining. Always, ever present. Present in every element of experience, the body and the mind. By remaining fully impartial, you recognize that you are the sunlight. Just as light is necessary for us to perceive anything visually, conscious awareness is necessary in order for us to experience anything. But just as we forget the light is there and instead focus on what the light is shining upon, so too we forget that conscious awareness is there and instead focus entirely on what we are consciously aware of. And everything that we are consciously aware of becomes an object of our attention. When we hold an object of our attention in our awareness, we become the subject to that object. Withdraw the attention from the object, and the subject also vanishes. Here dissolves the subject to object relationship, and you are revealed to be the pure, shining, bright, conscious awareness, unmixed with any content of experience. So all is well. Be free from this story. be free from the confines and the limitations of the body and mind. Still aware, still connected, not abandoning the body or mind, but allowing body and mind to rest, sink into the ever-expanding waves of love, the ever-expanding waves of peace. That is the pure, unmixed, unmanifested consciousness. That is the indestructible nature of your being. Just as the sunlight shines upon all conflict and turmoil on earth. But the sun is not subject to any of this chaos. So too, there may be turmoil and chaos in your mind, in your body, in your world, in your life. But the conscious awareness is not subject to this chaos, to this turmoil. Remains ever present, ever loving, always at peace, always at home. Not damaged, not hurt. But pure, untouched forever, clear, open, both empty and full simultaneously. Infinitely renewing in energy and possibility. Both still and powerful. And like sunlight again, the source of all life. The source of all energy. Infinite and ever present, though often hidden and forgotten. And yet will remain waiting to be discovered infinitely, eternally. Do not give this to the mind. The mind will try to turn this into a concept or a belief or a framework of understanding. But this transcends all mind activity. The mind can relax now. Allow the mind to understand its job is complete. Its journey is over. It did well. It did everything it was supposed to do. And now here arriving at the final final piece of knowledge, the final piece of the puzzle. Now the mind can finally retire. And just as even people in retirement stay busy and find things to do, the work is done. So do not give this understanding to the mind. It is not necessary. The understanding is already here. All courses complete. All knowledge known. So instead, simply abide as what you have discovered. The awareness of experience, disinterested from the content of experience, sink into pure knowing awareness, already complete, already over. Allow, allow, allow. All is well. Nothing left to do. Nowhere left to go. Nobody you have to be. Nothing left to figure out. Nothing left to heal. Simply shine. And if there is still restless energy in the body and mind, this is okay. Restless energy is also observed by awareness. In time, this restlessness will subside. The agitation of the mind and body may take time to rest, to subside. Perhaps you may feel frustrated that there is still a cloud of darkness, a heaviness in the body, and the feelings, the emotions still feels heavy despite the clear seeing, despite clear recognition and understanding, a frustration at the continued heaviness of the body and mind. This is normal. The habit of body and mind has been going on for decades. It may take time to lighten. Also, do not forget the trick of perception. As awareness expands, the light of consciousness floods the body and mind. You become aware of tension, tightness, darkness that you previously were unaware of. You are simply noticing it more now. Once noticed, once observed in the pure light of awareness, even this dense, heavy darkness cannot stay forever. As the sunlight evaporates the morning mist, so too the accumulated darkness of all those decades is free and given permission to expand. and breathe. Allow the emotions to come up. We are not afraid of emotion. Allow it to come up. Whatever is manifesting, there is no right or wrong way to feel. Now that emotion has a space, now that emotion has a freedom to be expressed without judgment, without fear, without having to be constrained and tightened up. This emotion is now free to be released from body and mind. The infinite expanse of consciousness can take all of it. So allow up and out. And be aware of the mind's tendency towards a self-judgment. You may feel you're not getting it, or it's not happening quick enough for you. Or you may feel as though you are somehow a hopeless case. You're just too damaged. You're just too hurt. This is just objections of the mind. Very clever defense mechanisms that it has as it holds on to that old pain. And all of it is seen in the light of awareness. Every subtle barrier, every clever trick, every diversion of attention, every judgment, every belief. It's all seen so clearly now. Just as the sunlight shines upon every facet of the earth, so too our conscious awareness shines upon even the most ancient and deepest, trickiest parts of our own psyche. So these very old shadows of feeling not good enough, feeling like you can't quite get it for whatever reason. These two are just momentary illusions. Now, if you feel in the pure, open, empty light of awareness that you are not quite feeling that full, enlightened expansiveness, this is okay. Simply recognize the trick of perception that is happening here. The light of awareness is observing this frustration, and we become pulled into that frustration. But let's change the script. Don't get pulled in to the frustration. Even that was just another trick, just another one. Just another thought. The thought, I'm not a good enough spiritual seeker. I'll never get this. I can't meditate properly. That thought is a thought just the same as, what should I have for dinner tonight? It's just another thought, all equal in the eyes of awareness. And the thought, I need to fill my car up with gas. It's just another thought. So recognize clearly some thoughts have a deeper emotional weight to them. And that is why we get pulled in so quickly, so seemingly irrevocably. But it's just another trick. You already are the awareness. You already are the conscious light. It is not something to be attained or achieved, just recognized, just realized. So even thoughts of, I've been doing this for so long and I still haven't got it. Just a thought. Feeling like you do understand. However, there is still darkness and heaviness here. So maybe I'm not getting the right thing. That is just a thought. Just leave everything, 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 everything. And remaining as this light, recognizing the light shines upon everything. Sunlight shines upon the moon. But to our perception, it appears as though it is the moon that is shining. But moonlight is actually sunlight reflected. So as we begin to move into the informal aspect of the meditation now, be like the moonlight, recognizing deeply that the source of this shine is your conscious awareness, ever present, background of experience that is always light, always open, always conscious, always free, always at peace, unmixed, unbound, not tied up or limited by the content of experience, but is the consciousness that is aware of that experience. So as we move about in our daily life, we can still be free to enjoy the daily life, to enjoy our activities, to enjoy socializing, to even enjoy our thoughts, to enjoy our work, to enjoy everything, the good and the negative, and recognize that the witnessing presence of this activity, of this life unfolding, is your essential nature. So be as the sun shines upon the moon, and as we continue with our experience, as we move into the informal question and answer section, be like the moonlight. We'll begin shifting our posture and bringing ourselves back however we see fit, however we wish to. And just begin bringing yourself back into the room in any manner that feels the most appropriate and comfortable for you. Let's try and sort these eyes out a little. We may wish to take some deeper breaths just to begin re-embodying ourselves a little. And we'll be moving into the question and answer section, which is a space in which you can share any insights, any experiences, ask any questions, give any updates on your progress in meditation, the spiritual path that you may be on. Just discuss anything in general, anything you feel is relevant or you'd like to share and bring out. This is the space to do it. So, opening out. Let's see what we have here today. Firstly, good morning, Aubrey. Beautiful Aubrey. Actually catching a live stream, yes, over there in the States, right? I wasn't sure whether to do that. So it's 12:45 here PM. I don't know what time that would be in the States. And then I realized the States is massive. It's huge. So there's actually different time zones within the States. And I was trying to pick the right time. So it was between 12 o'clock and 1 o'clock. I don't know if we've caught everyone. I mean, I doubt I'll catch the entirety of America anyway. Don't quite have that reach yet. But well, one day we'll see. But thank you for joining me, everyone from the States. We have. Thanks, Corinne, for doing what you did. My pleasure. Believe me, the pleasure is all mine. As I've said before, the best way to learn is to teach. So thank you for listening. Your story is inspiring and your videos provide immense comfort. That's good. That's beautiful. How do we disregard the mind, given we seemingly need it to even call itself out? Yes, much gratitude. Yes, and much gratitude to you. Thank you. How do we disregard the mind, given we seemingly need it to even call itself out? Yeah. So there's two analogies that are apt here that are quite good. The first one is, if you ever get a thorn in your skin, I don't know if you've ever had this experience of having a thorn in your skin and you can't pick it out with your fingernails. Everything you do seems to just push it further in. Survivalists will tell you, people, the bushcraft people, the people who go out into the woods and do all of this, tell you the best thing to do to remove a thorn or a spine from the skin is to get the exact same thorn that's in there, and that will be the perfect tool to remove the thorn. Just the natural, for some reason, it just works like that. In fact, I'm going to go 3 analogies here because I just thought of one, and this is the first time I've heard this. When you crack an egg into a pan, you know how sometimes a bit of the shell comes off with it, and it's a nightmare. And then you try and fish the shell out with your fingers, and it just keeps like slipping away from you. Then you get a spoon, and that doesn't work either. The best thing to use to get the shell out of the egg is the shell, the scoop, the empty shell that you have. Use it to scoop that shell out, and it's because the material of the shell moves through the egg easier. I'm not giving cooking tips here. That's a metaphor. That's an analogy. And then the third one is, if you're on a boat and you get to the island, you don't stay on the boat. You get the purpose was to get off the boat and get on the island. The boat was necessary. The boat was very necessary to get to the island, but once you're there, it's time to get off. So this is quite a common one in the spiritual seeking and the spiritual path, is because you might come to realize that, hang on, this isn't my mind figuring out how to get rid of itself. And then we end up in this awful feedback loop that starts to happen. And it's true. And this is a good sign. If you find yourself in the position you're in there, if you find yourself in the, but now I feel like a dog chasing its tail sort of thing, my mind is my mind not just trying to get rid of itself now? And how can that happen? Because the moment you feel like it's done it, it's just continuing around on this loop. It's just a continuing thought stream. That shows such a deep level of introspection and conscious awareness that you're aware of that very deeply ingrained mind pattern. So recognize that what's happened there when you're caught on that little wheel is that you're sat on the boat, and you're you're still trying to sail the boat, even though you've arrived at the island. And so at that point, there's a sort of, there will be a moment where you just go, I've had enough of this boat. I'm just going to get onto the island. And that's the point where the mind is discarded. Now you're still aware the boat is there. The boat, you know, that's fine. You're going to go and enjoy the beach now. Have one of those drinks in a coconut, right? Enjoy the sunshine and the waves on the beach. You may be aware that there's still a boat there, but that's fine. That shouldn't really be. That's not a hindrance to you enjoying the island. The boat isn't a hindrance to you enjoying your holiday, provided you are firmly off the boat. So that's the first thing I would say. The reason I use the analogy of the thorn and the eggshells is because the mind is the only tool we have in the early days. And when we're, say you've got that thorn in and it's a nightmare and it's causing you a lot of pain and you're trying to dig it out, but then all of a sudden you realize you can use another thorn. Essentially what that is the mind has suddenly discovered a method for easing its own pain. And so we construct this almost, many spiritual paths, and you'll find this, why many spiritual teachers often have a wry smile, and why the Buddha, I'm literally looking at a statue of the Buddha here, why the Buddha has that little smile, is because ultimately even spiritual paths are just they're there to bring you to this point, to the exact point that you've arrived at here. You've arrived at the point of, this is just another, it's like waking up from the, you come out of the matrix and just realize you're in another matrix. I know I use a lot of metaphors. I shouldn't mix my metaphors. I do that too much, but that's a really good one. And that's what you've noticed. You thought you'd broken free of the matrix, and then it's like, but hang on, how do I know this isn't just another matrix? Well, it is. So that's one thing. And hopefully that goes some way, although this is a slightly different question. There's almost two questions that are here. So the first one is, how do we disregard the mind? Because hidden in that question there, you're saying we seemingly need it. Now that's an awful red herring. Awful red herring. You don't need your mind, which is the revelation that quite literally blows a lot of people's minds. The clues are in language, right? Everywhere. Blow your mind. That's the idea. We want to blow your mind. We, again, though, your wording is actually very accurate, given we seemingly need it. That's right. It appears that we need it. It seems as though we need it. But let me ask you this. Become aware of your breathing now. Become aware you are breathing. Now you've suddenly become conscious of your breath, and you probably have now that we're talking about it, now that I've brought that to your attention, you've probably started to control your breathing. Maybe you're trying to breathe deeper, maybe trying to breathe shallower. But before I said become aware of your breathing, were you not breathing? You weren't conscious you were doing it. You were focused on all this nonsense. I was talking about eggshells and thorns and boats on islands and all this nonsense that this weirdo on the internet was chatting about, matrices and stuff. You weren't thinking about your breath. You weren't thinking about it at all. And yet it was continuing. The same goes for your heart beating, although you can't start consciously beating your heart. Don't try to, by the way. But now all of the processes that happen in the body is a fantastic analogy for spiritual development, by the way. But all of these processes that happen in your body, you don't need your mind for it to happen. Now, the more we spiritually awaken and let go, the more you let go, and it's not very easy to do rapidly, and this is why it can take a little bit of time and it can feel a bit nerve-wracking and a bit scary to start with. It's because the more we awaken and let go of the mind, the more we realize it's just doing itself. Life is just doing itself. Reality is doing itself, and you have got nothing to do with any of it. And you can check this out for yourself. Now, it's not a case of trying to do nothing, because that's not right. That's an ego mind trap thing that some people try to do. It's not about doing nothing. It's about letting go and realizing that you only need a soft touch, similar to if you were to, let's go back to the boat analogy, to steer that boat, the best is to trust the weather. And we can adjust the sail, but that's all we can do. You really are at the mercy of the water and the wind. So this concept that we need the mind, just the more you release, the more you realize that actually the mind was causing more problems than it was solving. The mind is a problem solver, but it's so good at its job that it creates problems that don't actually exist in order to justify its own existence. So do we need the mind? Well, go one day without it and see what happens. Just see what happens. I know I make everything sound very easy, and that's not the intention. I try to make things sound simple, but easy is a different story, and it's not easy. This is a habit. If you come to think of the mind as an activity, not as an object. We in our common parlance, in our usual lexicon, the way we describe the mind, we tend to describe it like it's a noun, like it's a thing, because that's how we like things to be all neatly partitioned up into categories, and the mind is another noun. Just get rid of the noun and recognize it's an activity. Mind is an activity. It's a verb. It's a doing. Mind. It's a doing. We're minding everything. We mind our entire lives. And this activity has been going on since they first sat you down at school. That's how long this has been going on. Decades, most likely. So for somebody to come along and say, disregard the mind, just stop the mind. That's it. It very rarely works like that. It does in some cases, but it very rarely works like that. So we have to recognize that there is going to be some momentum and inertia of the mind. And one of the ways it doesn't like to be let go of too quickly. And one of the ways that you try to let go of it and it grabs back onto you, one of the ways it does that is by saying, but you need me. You need me. You need me to survive. So that's why it just takes some gentle steps of just go an hour without the mind and see if your life's any worse. Maybe not whilst you're doing something important, not whilst you're operating heavy machinery or something like that, obviously. I mean, come on, we'll get to that point, but just whilst you're going about your daily activities, just see if, just think, well, if my mind wasn't here right now, I'd still be able to do all of this. And then maybe that can expand to activities like cooking, something that requires a bit of mind activity, but just let it sink into the background. And slowly, 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 a sense of reassurance just builds up where you go, oh, you almost start putting your life activities on a sort of, you just turn down the amount of processing power you're putting into it. Just ease off the throttle, just reduce the energy that's going to that. And you realize that, oh, actually, yeah, it's problems don't happen because you didn't worry enough. Problems happen when you worry too much. I've thrown a lot of metaphors and advice at you on that particular one, but it's a very interesting one, and it's one that's come up very often. But my key piece of advice there is just, you don't actually need the mind. It was necessary, but it's played its part. As it came up in the meditation there, I hadn't planned it actually, that it's almost as though there's no sense in turning the mind into an enemy. It sometimes plays like that. It sometimes plays like the mind is this sort of like horrible demon that we need to like kill, and it doesn't quite work like that. It's more, we can still have a sense of compassion, and this also helps to sort of soothe any inner child stuff that might be getting triggered by the sense of abandonment and stuff, because that happens quite a lot. And it might, all those parts of you, those nervous parts of you, those damaged parts of you are a bit nervous. They don't want to just be abandoned like that. So instead, it's more of a gentle, compassionate sense of, you've done your job now, mind. Thanks for everything. You've been a fantastic companion throughout this life, and we've had our ups and our downs, right? Lord knows we've had our ups and our downs, and it's been this way, that, and the other, but the journey's over now, because it's time to start something new. And so it's a sense of, give the mind its retirement ceremony. You've done a great job, and we'll still keep you around. Feel free to come in at any time, have a chat with everyone, but you no longer work here. Give it a medal and a golden handshake. Thanks, mind. Thanks for everything. We'll see you when we see you, but this is where your services are no longer required. There's maybe an element of sadness to it, but it's a beautiful sadness. I'm glad. Oh, so that gives you some much needed clarity. Thanks for the analogies and detailed explanation. I've been grappling with this vicious circle for some time now. The pleasure is all mine. I know there are 3 big analogies there that might be good to just understand and work through, but ultimately, all of it can be gone. Your words remind me of my recent studies. Wisdom is knowing I am nothing. Love is knowing I am everything. And between the two, my life moves. Nisargadatta Maharaj. Yes, I'm aware of that sage. He's marvelous. And in particular, he does have more of that element of just that, the joyfulness and the playfulness is that, yes, that embodiment of that love and that joy and compassion. It is the beautiful paradox of, when you sink into nothing, you suddenly become aware that you are everything. And often the nothingness language, the void language, sounds quite negative, but the everything, I am the universe, almost feels like too much. It's too positive. I am infinite. I am universal. It's almost, that could aggrandize the ego. Whereas the nothingness, the emptiness, the void, that's almost like, that's too negative, and that's like a negation, a dismissal, and an avoidance of life. So there's these 2 huge polar opposites. But what's being alluded to there is that there's that middle ground where it's like, but if you are nothing and everything, you are nothing and everything. And everything all together as one technically is a nothing, because it's no thing, because the clues are in language. No thing. The universe is not filled with things, because the universe is one whole. And if something is whole, it's not categorized and partitioned. It's not delineated. It's not separate. There are no separate parts in a whole by definition. So when we say a whole thing, complete and whole in and of itself, has no things in it. So nothing and everything work together as one. You can't have the yin without the yang. We need both. So the emptiness and the fullness that Nisargadatta Maharaj is speaking of is that the unity of those two concepts, that to the logical mind, this is why the logical mind causes us so many problems, because it needs one or the other. The mind is very black and white. Both things can't be true, but it's in the spiritual awakening process that you go, wow, two things can be true? Cognitive dissonance at its most extreme end. And yet, the peace upon the resolution of that paradox is total and complete. Even it's often, I'll just let you into my secrets here, let you into my tricks. When you fully immerse into that open, empty space of consciousness, and yes, we're trying to bring the mind to that experiencing itself as totally still, silent. You experience non-existence, and it can be the experiencing of shunyata, the void. But I know that if I can bring somebody to that place and their ego and identity is evaporated, I know that individual will then be free to enjoy the fullest expression of their life, which is a paradox, because wasn't I trying to bring them to a place where they realize they are nothing? They are the void. We are all the icy void of the universe. I was trying to bring them to that point, but the reason for that is because upon that evaporation of their ego identity, that being is suddenly freed from the constraint, freed from the bindings of the suffering, temporary, finite mind, and suddenly free to experience what they should have been experiencing all along, which is the beautiful, full, free, flowing expression of life, love, peace, and the joy of being, unfettered, unbound, untethered by this petty, constantly desiring, constantly fearful mind. With that thing gone, void experienced, then turning around, well, I guess I'm stuck here in the infinite ice cold void forever now, turning around and seeing, whoa, the kingdom of heaven just opened up in front. And you go, oh, I see. It was upon realizing that I'm not what I thought I was. Upon that realization, that thing can go. And now the beauty, the joy, and wonder of the universe is now revealed to me. Once again, the revelation. Just as it was when you were a child. To enter the kingdom of heaven, one must become again as a child, as one book says. Sorry. So, can you remember how wondrous even the smallest thing seemed when you were a child? Just a tree, the moon. I use the moon as an analogy in the meditation, but just the moon. You could just gaze up into it. It's just like, what? Just seeing a bird having a bath in a puddle. Just the way the light shone through the window to see the dust particles in the air. The smell of cake. The sound of your friends. Just everything. There was just a wonder. Now, that wonder and joy isn't because the child has something that we don't. It's because we have something that the child doesn't. What we have is the heavy weight of years and years of habitual egoic mind identity preventing us from accessing the joy and the beauty of life. So we got bored of it. You've seen enough trees. Well, now we know what a tree is. But if we take the concept of tree away and we can see it for what it is again, wow. You remove all the memory of trees, all the memory of any concept, all the memory of bird, all the memory of dust particles in the air. Let's say you didn't know they were dust particles. If I snap my fingers and all of a sudden you get this weird crypto amnesia and you've suddenly forgotten what dust particles are. And now you see the shaft of light through the window and there are glittering specks in the air. Imagine the wonder. Imagine just how that would appear if you'd never seen it before. That's what it appears like when the ego identity drops. Because all of these years of concepts that have made everything boring and mundane and made everything a world of object and matter and form and people, and we're all tied up in our story. I've got to do this, I've got to do that. They did this to me, I did that to them. Everything's bad, everything's wrong. The world's all wrong, everything's wrong, everyone's doing everything wrong, everything, it's just chaos. We're all going down the pan fast. It's all awful. Everything's awful all the time. That's the mind, the ego identity of the mind. If we dropped all of that and just saw things as they are now, as they are, without concept, without referring to the weight, the depth of this painful, decades-long activity of egoic mind identification, suddenly we are once again renewed. For each day our spirit is renewed. Core, C-O-R. Seeing the mind as an activity, that's actually a profound perspective shift. Perfect. Thank you. That last word you used there, I think, is a slang word that I'm not sure whereabouts in the world you are, but here in the UK, that means something slightly different. I think that might be an Australian slang. I don't know, but I can't say it out loud because it has a different meaning. Yeah. So the mind as an activity, yes, that's huge in itself. The mind as an activity. You could even come to see the mind as a behavior. Think of thoughts as a behavior. That's one of the things that I learned in cognitive behavioral therapy when I was first taking a look at my anxiety and depression. I did cognitive behavioral therapy, and she was very good at helping me to see things slightly differently. And one of the key components of cognitive behavioral therapy is to perceive cognition, thought, and thinking as a behavior, as something that you do, your daily habitual behavior activity. It's not something that happens to you. And it took we had quite a lot of sessions. It was wonderful, actually. I look back and I owe her a huge debt of gratitude because she was very good. She was firm at times because of my nonsense. And sometimes she was very good at being firm and keeping me on track. And I learned a lot of things in cognitive behavioral therapy that I still use to this day, even in the most advanced of the meditation techniques that I might practice or teach. So it's all good. Everything's good. There's juice in all of these disciplines and in all of these practices. So yes, that perspective shift, mind as an activity, not an object. It's not a noun. See it as a verb, and things will start to change for you very quickly. No one can pass the gateless gate, so become no one. Enjoy that one. Yes, that's right. The gateless gate is that's a phrase in Buddhism. The gateless gate. It's the last gate, the final barrier. To realize there is no gate. That's a real mind-bending one, that. Yes. Yes, you can. I have experienced it through different means, but that childlike state of wonder to see utter perfection in everything, to see life as the gift it is. Yes, indeed. Indeed. See you, Dale. It's the only thing that everyone has in common. The one thing that we share, and we know this to be true. I can't assume anything about anyone other than I know they are consciously experiencing their experience now. That's it. And there is something incredibly unifying about this. I can't say what somebody's experience is. I wouldn't be able to say how they experience the world or experience their body, but I do know that they must be able to experience their experience. The awareness of awareness. That is the one thing we all share, but very few people look directly at it. But that is the unity that we seek. And if we can see that in each other, then there's no more trying to find common ground or conflict, because it's already there, it's assumed. I was telling my 10-year-old daughter I'd give anything to be a child again. She said, "What about all the homework you'll have to do? And then you wouldn't have me too." Yep. Got me thinking again. Yes. Yes, it's we have to remember that childhood, although it came with those huge moments of wonder, it also came with the huge moments of terror and despair as well. It's not that we are seeking to enter a childish state, but to rediscover that childlike wonder. It's to rediscover when you're an adult, you have all the resources and the new framework of seeing the world and all the freedom that you have as an adult. You didn't have that as a child. But now as an adult, if you could then re-experience the childlike wonder again, the freshness, the newness, the constant renewal, but now you have the freedom and resources of a grown adult. So we wouldn't want to revert back, because look, the wisdom there, the wisdom of a 10-year-old, right? She has nailed that. That shows deep introspection and insight. You say, "I want to be a child again." Says, "But what about all the homework?" And it's like, oh yeah, I kind of forgot that. We can't also forget just how terrifying the world can be, which is a lot of the reason why we develop the egoic mind identity in the first place, is as a barrier against the terrors of the world and a way of navigating and understanding some of the well, it's fear and desire. Those are the two things that kind of create mind identification in the first place. So we definitely shouldn't discount just how much children go through on a daily basis. It's a dreadful mistake we sometimes make. And she's right as well. Then you wouldn't have me too. Yeah. And we should we should be the space in which our children can express their beauty, their joy, their wonder. The space, be the safe space in which the young people around us are then free to experience life. They don't have that freedom, and they don't have the physical freedom. They don't have the physical resilience. They don't have the physical resources just yet, but you do. So if we're open to sharing all of that, and they are then free to express themselves and free to experience life under that protection, but with just enough space, just enough freedom that they're allowed to make their own mistakes and everything, but just enough protection that they are safe to make those mistakes. It's a tricky balance. We should give them the energy and the joy to become independent, to go and experience the world and life. We should want to be so happy ourselves that our children feel that and want to be that happy, aspire to be that happy, to be that free. Wild energy, youth, wild, chaotic, can be too wild. Over enough time, it just condenses into a more stable pattern. I don't know why the moon analogy has been so prominent for me recently, but it struck me as a beautiful metaphor for consciousness. And incidentally, in Zen, which was some of my first steps into the more powerful awakening experiences, in Zen, the moon features all the time. In Zen poetry, they are constantly speaking of the moon. And my favorite, most profound Zen poem that I sometimes can read, and that's as much reading as I need to do for an entire week. There's a week's worth of spiritual practice just in rereading this poem, and it goes like this. The long night, the monkey thinks how to catch hold of the moon. To me, that's a complete spiritual curriculum in one short poem. And I got to thinking on the moon. So maybe I'm the monkey thinking of how to catch hold of the moon here. To me, moonlight demonstrates to us just how much appearances can fool us. If you had no understanding of science, no understanding of physics, no understanding of the celestial bodies, no understanding of astronomy, no understanding of, deep space physics or anything like that. And all you had to go on was the evidence of what you can see. That's it. That's all you have to go on, is the evidence of what you can, what things appear to be. If you were to look at the moon, It appears as though the moon is shining. It appears as though the moon is a light source in and of itself. But we know now that actually it's the sunlight that reflects off of the moon, and that's what moonlight is. There's no actual such thing as moonlight. There's no such thing. It doesn't exist. There is no moonlight. There is only sunlight. The moon is not a source of light, but it appears so obvious. And you wouldn't be able to tell somebody that, no, the moon is not shining, if they had none of the background, none of the scientific kind of understanding behind it. You say the moon's not shining, they'd look at you like you're crazy. What are you talking about? It's obviously shining. It's right there. You'd have to point out that just because that's how it appears, that doesn't necessarily mean that's how it is. But we can have the concession and make allowance for, however, I concede that it absolutely does appear to be shining. It really does. It appears that it is emanating light. Unfortunately, it's not. Now, how's that relevant to spirituality? The first thing is just we know then, and we can say with absolute certainty through our own experience, our own lived, felt, understood experience, our own senses can lie to us. Something might appear one way very convincingly, but it turns out to be an illusion. But we always stop at a certain point. You know, those visual tricks, those like magic eye pictures where there's like two faces looking at each other, and then in the middle there's a vase. And until somebody points out there's two faces and a vase, you can only see one or the other. You'd look at that picture and say, no, it's a vase. Someone says, no, there's two faces there as well. And you say, no, it's a vase. And then you see the two faces and you go, oh, okay, yeah, I see. The trick of the eye, it's called something. I'm missing the actual definition of what that's called. It's like an optical illusion. But we say, but that ends there though. That's just a silly, fancy sort of trick. But what if we expanded that knowledge? Now that we know, we've experienced this, we expanded it out. Because how can we be sure that anything is as it appears? Maybe it only appears that way. Now, we could go down the road of metaphysics there and start saying, so is this solid reality at all? Not product placement cup. Is this reality? Sure appears that way. I can taste the water. I can feel the plastic. So I'm not going to get into the metaphysical stuff. Instead, let's go down a slightly different little avenue of exploration here, a slightly different avenue of contemplation. And let's look at our senses. And we've already established senses can lie to us. Sight, that can lie. We've just established that. Optical illusions. Smell. Have you ever smelt something, thought it was something, but it turns out to be something else? Is something burning? And you start panicking. Something's burning. And then you realize there's a bonfire outside, something like that. Okay, that can lie. Hearing something. Sometimes you might hear, like, is that somebody just say my name? Did someone just say my name just then? And everyone would look up like, no, nobody said your name. It's just, some noise was made and you suddenly thought somebody. So we know our hearing can lie to us. Touch, that can lie to us too, right? Sometimes you flinch or something. You're like, oh, I thought it was like a spider crawling on my skin or something, but it was just a feather that dropped past, right? You sometimes flinch and you get like, oh, what was that? Oh, it's okay. I thought it was an insect or something and it wasn't. Sight, smell, sound. touch, taste. You can taste something that it's not actually. You could have, like, let's say, artificial strawberry. It would taste very much like strawberry, but we know it's not the real thing. Artificial flavor. So we know all of our senses can lie to us. Now, what about our bodily sensations? I mean, the internal world, the internal experience of having a body. That is one that continually evades our investigation into, could this be lying to me? By which I mean here, if we close our eyes, if you're in the position to do so, obviously don't do this if you're driving, but if you are in a position to close your eyes and just feel the felt sense of the body, and we say, it is so obvious that I am this body. Nothing could be more obvious in the world, right? That is so obvious. I am undeniably my body. That is absolutely 100% totally clear. Nobody could tell me otherwise. But how do we not know that we are being just like the person who thinks the moon is shining? Who thinks the moon is emanating a light source? It's obvious to that person until they have the new information, at which point the other thing becomes obvious. And then you can see it both ways, like the optical illusion. So what if the felt sense of this body that you're experiencing now is like moonlight? There's no such thing. What you're experiencing is actually consciousness emanating from somewhere else that is shining upon the sensation, or creating the sensation as the consciousness shines upon that sensation. And the belief that I am this body because I can feel it was so obvious, just because, based on my experience, based on what I can feel, based upon all available evidence to my senses, I am this body. Until somebody pointed out, how do you know that? So what if we're not just a sack of skin, flesh, and bone that somehow gives rise to consciousness somehow, that we're still not really, we don't know how, but we just say that it does. But what if that's not the case? What if that's just how it appears? Now, most people would say, well, that's ridiculous. You can't say that. It's so obvious. That's not true. Well, we have already established that our senses lie to us. Not always, but often. So could it not, what makes the felt sense of the body exempt from that illusion? That rabbit hole goes very deep. So the comment comes in about, I have seen the moon mentioned in so many different teachings, not just Zen. Yes, it's mentioned often. There's something about the moon, isn't there? It's ethereal. It's spiritual. It just is. It's there's power in it. There is a cold, energized stillness to a full moon. And crisp. That winter night, black sky, shining moon. Zen speaks a lot about the cold as well. Cold moonlight, crisp, cold, clear. That is the shunyata, the void. And maybe that's why it's so prominent in so many teachings, contemplations, and meditations, is because it's seen as mysterious, isn't it? There's a mystery about the moon. It is mystical and something magical about it. And maybe that's what we're perceiving. It's the clue. The clues are everywhere. The universe has placed clues everywhere. Brahman, God, however you want to whatever terminology you want to use. The clues have been laid out everywhere. It's just opening your eyes to see them. You see with a spiritual understanding, and everything becomes your guru. Everything becomes a teaching. I can see you start to just see everything as a clue, as as an opening, a crack in reality that you can deepen your understanding in. I get them all the time. And if you want to start going down that path a little, and I would highly recommend it, because your own experiences are the best opening to reality that there is. The best place to start as a practice there is just think, are there any scenes in movies or particular movies that have stuck with you your entire life, ever since you saw them? There was something powerful about a particular scene, about a particular line, about a particular character, that everyone else can just sort of take it or leave it. Whatever. I don't know. It was cool, but whatever. But it was significant for you. Or a song, a line in a song, or a poem or a painting, some form of art that stuck with you. There will be a deep meaning in that. There's a reason it stayed with you. There is a reason it stayed with you. For me, Gandalf fighting the Balrog in the Mines of Moria. I don't know if you know that scene from Lord of the Rings, Fellowship of the Ring. But, whoa. That stuck with me, and I watched that on repeat, because that scene, for me, is a perfect depiction of the spiritual journey. Gandalf going from Gandalf the Grey, going down into the depth, facing the shadow, defeating the shadow, but being destroyed in the process, and then re-emerging as Gandalf the White. I mean, we couldn't have a more accurate depiction of the spiritual path. But that's one of my personal ones. For other people, it might be different things. But I see that as there are just clues in everything, clues everywhere. In the language, in the art, in the physical world around us. And then, so do that for a while and see what comes up. Write them down. And listen to those songs again, watch those movies again, and just think, what is trying to come through here? What is the universe trying to tell me? Because there's a reason you can't let it go. A certain scene, and it can often be Latin phrase, insta kilnus invenitur, which means you will find it in the filth. It's often a place you don't want to go. It's often something you don't want to face. But when you have the courage to face it, that's when the truth arrives. That's weird. Because then, after doing some of that with art and things that have spoken to you, strangely enough, you look back through your own past experiences, some of the experiences you've had that have really stuck in your head that people have said to you, or events and stuff that were weird or strange at the time. And then you see that the clues had been laid out for you your entire life. In your life, not in a story external to you, but in your personal story, you start to see those scenes play out with a spiritual significance. Some of them will be deep and almost impossible to convey to somebody else, but you will have a knowledge about yourself that is worth its weight in gold, that no psychiatrist would ever be able to tell you about you. You will know it from your own experience, that no spiritual teacher would be able to tell you about you, that nothing would be able to tell you about you, because it came from your own experiences. Some of them might be very negative, very unpleasant, but that is the path of transmutation. We are turning that lead to gold. The entirety of all that perceived apparent past is like coal, and we can dig it up and burn it for fuel and heat. The negative path of self-inquiry is my favorite, and that you can never be what you experience or perceive. Keep going until you reach the I that experiences. Yes, so that's the self-inquiry practice that is practiced through, a really good one to look into for that is Sri Ramana Maharshi. Even just saying that name just fills me with joy. Just self-inquiry. Yes, just keep receding back. And in particular, for me, there was a big shift in perspective upon that one about the object and subject. If there's no longer any objects, the subject disappears also, which is why we don't experience deep sleep, because when there's no object of awareness present, the subject disappears as well. And to be able to do that in waking life is really quite something. Nothing is real and nothing to get hung about. Strawberry fields forever. Heard it as a young boy, stayed with me since. So that's one of those clues, right? Strawberry fields forever. So is that the lyric? Nothing is real and nothing to get hung about. Is that nothing to get hung up about, or? There will be a reason that it stayed with you. That's what I would urge deeper inquiry into. Just, what is that? Are you interested in shadow work? Yes. The shadow has been interpreted in many different ways now, and how, it's often credited that Carl Jung sort of popularized the term, popularized the shadow self. It's a really tough one, the shadow work. It might be slightly outside the scope of what I can kind of teach through a live stream. It's dark by its very nature. Shadow work, shadow material, the shadow self. It's the Balrog, There's a reason that Gandalf didn't want to go to those mines. He was more than happy having a good time with the hobbits, going about doing his busy work on Middle Earth. But he knew sooner or later he was gonna have to face this thing, the Balrog. The dwarves dug too deep and too greedily. I won't do the whole scene as much as I'd like to. If people feel called to shadow work, I think it's a good thing to start inquiring into. Once I started the process of looking at the elements of myself that I didn't want to acknowledge, to perceive, to recognize, it started a journey and a process that was absolutely hideous at times. That's probably the best word I can use to describe it. But the healing that came out of that was life changing, life affirming. So it is a lyric, a song by the Beatles. You'll have to forgive my ignorance. My knowledge of the Beatles is absolutely shocking for an Englishman. So the Beatles got really into Eastern spirituality, didn't they? If I remember correctly. Didn't they become very... Didn't all their music change, their whole style changed when they really got into some Eastern spirituality? I wonder if that was around about the same time they wrote those lyrics. Nothing is real and nothing to get hung about. Strawberry fields forever. Yeah. All right. Are there any more questions, insights, experiences, understandings, teachings, anything that anyone wants to share? Everyone's a teacher and everyone's a student. If not, we can begin to wrap things up. Which always feels like a bit of a shame because I feel so much peace from doing this. There were audio issues for this stream. Oh dear, oh dear. Wow, that's an intense question to be ending on. I'll see what I can do with that in a moment. What was the nature of the audio issues? You say it was scratchy? Maybe you can hear me well enough at this time. The audio thing, I need to get better equipment. I really do. I'm well aware of that. And I need to understand my own, the technical stuff more. So about the Beatles thing, getting into Eastern philosophy and Eastern spirituality. That's right. Plenty of controversy around it too. I'm from India. Oh, wow. Okay. Yes, I'm sure there was. Yes, I'm sure there was. Like I said, my ignorance of the Beatles and that sort of era is massive. It just never really interested me all that much. But I'm aware that, there was that. That was interesting, wasn't it? What an interesting event the Beatles were. I think a lot of their lyrics have been, you see a lot of their lyrics as quotes, as quite powerful. If you think about songs like Imagine by John Lennon and things like that, Very powerful. Okay, so with on the audio, random glitches or stuttering. Okay, see if it's in the recording later. Could just be me, but usually don't have an issue. Yeah, I don't. There isn't usually, but this is at a different time as well. So I wonder if that's made a difference today. Not really sure why it would. Maybe the internet's not as good at the moment. Maybe the dark, energetic, spiritual forces are more prominent today, and they're doing their utmost to interrupt this message. It's always possible. So we have a very difficult question that comes in. Not difficult, a very prominent and challenging question that comes in. Can we contact past loved ones? They haven't gone anywhere. The physical form passes. The mind passes. All things come and go. But our essential nature that we all share does not come and go. What makes a loved one is not their words, their behavior, or their physical form, but that which you experience in their presence. It is the experience of love that is felt when in the presence of a loved one. And awakening to the universal consciousness that we all share, you recognize that the love that you shared with somebody is still there. We may miss their form physically, we may miss their mind, we may miss the activity and the experiences they brought to our life. But those things brought a love, a peace, a joy that was awakened in your physical form and your mind, because they reminded you of what you were already. And you long to have that again. This is why we want to contact past beings. But they haven't gone anywhere. The universal consciousness, the love, the joy, the peace is always present. The universal, the consciousness, the presence of being behind everything is eternal. It was never born and it never dies. It's just forms and beings arise and dissolve within it. Now, it is claimed that some people can contact those beings once the being that arises within universal consciousness may leave their physical form, and their mind still exists within the infinite universal consciousness in some capacity, and some people claim to be able to contact them. Because that's never happened in my experience, I can't attest to any of that validity. I would probably say, what is it about contacting them? What do you really seek? What do you actually want from contacting a past loved one? Because it's probably more an alleviation of the grief that you're seeking. And the alleviation of grief isn't something that we can find externally, but find something within ourselves. And I don't know if anyone's ever had the experience of feeling just as, if not more connected to a being after their physical form has gone. I feel like I love them more now. Strange thing to say, I know, but there's more than one person who's had that experience. So I might suggest, would you really want to contact them? Or do you want to experience that sensation of oneness and love? Because it never went anywhere. I know that's not a particularly satisfying answer always, because it's one of the hardest things to go through, grieving for those who have passed. And I only ever like to speak to my own experiences, and I don't have as much experience with that as in other areas, so I wouldn't want to speak too much more on it. But I can speak to, I had a friend who passed away, and she was very young. She was only 19, and it was very sudden and unexpected due to a very rare condition that they still don't really fully understand. Sudden, out of the blue. And she was a good friend. And I was quite shocked by the events and started grieving. And it was about 2 weeks later, I was sat doing a meditation, and I had this candle lit, and it was dark as the sun had just begun setting over the horizon and was beginning to get dark. And I shut the curtains, it was dark. And as it got darker and darker, the candle appeared to get brighter and brighter. And an indescribable feeling washed through me that I knew she was there. I wouldn't ever be able to say how I knew she was there, but she was. So in my experience, the presence was felt. And now, whether this is a trick of the mind or not, I don't know. But whenever I see a white feather falling, I feel reminded of her and of her being. And I always say to her, if she's out there somewhere, I say, "You're not missing much down here." I don't know where those words ever came from, but it's because she was so young, and people worry about how sad it is that people then didn't get to experience the rest of how many more years they might have had. But for me, I in my experiences of life, it's just down here in this world, in this realm, there's not that much going on. You're not missing much down here. And one time, a voice came back, because I said, I saw the white feather. It's always when a white feather. So if you ever see a white feather falling, Maybe it's her. White feather fell. I said, "You're not missing much down here." And she replied, "Don't worry, you're not missing much up here either." And there was a lot of peace in that. But I wouldn't want to give any definites, because I would never want to give anyone false hope, because there are a lot of unsavory beings that will manipulate somebody's grief in order to sell something false, sell a false hope. There are many charlatans like that who can understand the grief someone's going through and offer a service to contact loved ones or whatever, and it's false. So if you were to try and do something like that, I would say do it through your own intuition, do it through your own understanding, do it in your own way. But what I could say for certain is that all is well. It might not always feel like it is, but it all is well, and ultimately we're all going upwards. That might not make much sense, but I know it. Ultimately, we all go up, eventually. It may take a few tries on the merry-go-round down here in the physical world, but eventually it's up. The only way is up after that. But the merry-go-round down here can go on for quite some time. But there's no further down. It's only up from here. So I'm sorry I can't give a more definitive answer and a more direct method of doing what you want to do there, other than let them in. If you wanted to contact somebody, let them. It's all on the shared being, and it could be the case that somebody's former mind just didn't have that much work to do on the merry-go-round down here, and so when their form passed, the mind was able to expand into the infinite expanse of the universe, and it wouldn't be possible to contact that mind because it's expanded so far. It's so infinite in its expanding into the kingdom of heaven that it wouldn't make any sense to try and speak to that mind. It's too beautiful. But sometimes minds may be a little bit more, they may have a bit more work still to do here, and so it possibly would be able to contact. I don't know. We're just walking each other home. That's beautiful. Yes. The song "My Sweet Lord" by George Harrison touches this subject a bit. I'll have to look into that. You're very welcome. To the seeker that said thanks. The Guru Osho was a weird trip. He was poisoned. Enlightened people not seeing their demise at the end. I ain't getting into Osho. Yep. Oh, welcome. Am I saying that right? Jörg Heglin. It sounds like it could be Swedish. My apologies if I've got that totally wrong. I'm sure I have. Took this meditation out for a run. Thank you so much. The pleasure is all mine. Nobody gets it right. No. Well, I'll let you into a secret. Nobody ever gets my name right either. I get called Kieran, Colin, Corona. I got called the other day. That was a blast. Corona, Kieran, Colin. One time I was trying to explain my name to somebody over the phone. I said Corin. She said, "What, Colin?" And I said, no, it's like Colin, but with an And she said, "Oh, Rollin." I was like, yeah, sure. Why not? Beautiful. Well, that's been absolutely beautiful today, team. It's been these streams are always a very awakening experience for me as well. As I say, the best way to learn is to teach. And it's always, I don't know how this is the case, but when people are open and receptive to hearing the words come easier. It just makes sense somehow. The words flow better when there's a receptive audience. So I just wanted to say thank you so much, everyone, for participating today and truly taking a deeper look at these matters with me. Okay. So yes, this has come up as a beautiful little segue here. Someone's joined the channel and chat membership. So I have the membership available on my channel. It should apparently the little join button like flashes up and does a little animation now. And yeah, so I have a Discord, which is like a group chat where we can continue to discuss these sorts of matters, and you can ask me any questions at all times, not just on the live stream. And I endeavor to get back to everyone within like 48 hours, and we can have some good chats, discussions, and a nice community, a nice sangha of like-minded individuals, because that's what we're missing some of the time when we feel lonely on the path. We feel like, because it's not easy to talk about a lot of these matters, whether it's deep emotional matters, whether it's spiritual matters. With most people, it's very difficult to speak about. And so it's nice to have these spaces where it can be discussed. And so on the channel and chat membership, there's the Discord, as well as access to my my premium meditations and talks that I can put up, because I know it's a shame, but the channel membership is a subscription fee, but it means I can put those videos up without ads. I can demonetize those ads and hopefully get to a position where I can put far more time, energy, effort, and resources into this channel and the membership options that I can create. So if you wanted to, or if you're a member and you wanted to upgrade into the chat membership, then you can join in the Discord, which, if you don't have an account already, you can just sort of sign in and make one, and then we can discuss things further. But if not, maybe you just want to support me in the channel. And if you do just want to support me in the channel, then thank you so much. You know, participation is not mandatory. If you just want to support me and my work and help me develop this channel further, then joining the membership is always very much appreciated. But that is plug over. Thank you so much for listening. So with everything said, thank you so much. I hope everyone is well. I hope everyone is continuing their deep introspection, their awakening journey, their healing journey. You can find a way to contact me if you do have any questions, queries, or insights as we go. I do these live streams Sunday and Wednesday now, so I do 2 a week. Sunday at 9 a.m. Greenwich Mean Time +1, which I think is like 2 a.m. or 3 a.m. in the States. And on Wednesday at 12 p.m. GMT +1, which I believe is 7 a.m. in most places in the States, or one way, either or the other on that. So feel free to drop in. I also put all of these live streams up on catch up afterwards, so you can watch the entire back catalogue and you can watch the entirety of these guided meditations and talks on my channel. Feel free to have a look around and check out some videos. And as always, don't forget to hit like and subscribe on the way out. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Just as we're leaving there, more comments coming in. Great stuff. I always think we go through Earth life to learn and grow for the better things to come on our next journey. Yeah, good. I don't need to extrapolate on that. People who have experienced NDE say exactly that. The Earth is the school. Yeah. Yeah. The only way is up after this one. You've done the hard work. You did the hardest bit. It's already over. Come on in, the water's fine. Beautiful. And with that, everyone, I shall say take care, be well, and stay present.